I literally got stabbed behind a 7-Eleven in Napa, California.
1998, WrestleMania.
I did everything right.
Definitely an inspiring story.
This is the Realty Talk podcast.
Two people or tag team. Who are you picking to be on your team?
All right, live from the Miramar Air Show. This is the Realty Talk podcast. We're super excited for today's episode. I always do an introduction for everybody. So to start, on your left, we have the queen of the closing table.
That would be me.
CEO of Innovate
That's
Realty.
sexy, right?
Yeah. The CEO of Innovate Realty, Suzanne Seini. I am Paul Hanson. I am the president of Bye Bye House. And we've got Ken Shamrock.
Woo!
Me, Ken Shamrock with us.
And do you guys know, Ken, because Paul is always giving nicknames, but you already have some nicknames, right? So
yes.
We've got the world's most dangerous man
That's what we've heard.
sitting next to us.
Yes.
So you don't even have to come up with something new, Paul. It's already done.
It's like that was given to me by an actual station that was doing a series on the world's most dangerous, like food, animals, person. And this was back in 90, I believe 94, 95. And they end up coming up with me being the world's most dangerous person or man.
Yeah.
And that's how I came up with the nickname and then got into pro wrestling. And they go, hey, weren't you named the world's most dangerous man? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
It just stuck. Yeah, that's perfect. They did it for you.
Can't name yourself, right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
I love it.
I was going to ask where you got the nickname, so that's awesome. That's great. Thanks for
legitimate.
So let's dive right in. I think it'd be interesting to talk about how we all met. So, as I mentioned, Suzanne is the CEO of Innovate Realty. It's a local, we call it it's bigger than boutique now. It's an independent brokerage in Southern California. We've got about 175 real estate agents that represent buyers and sellers. And one of those agents is an unbelievable human being. All of them are good, but this one in specific, you also know. So Daniel Colvin has built this awesome brand, Veteran Real Estate Group. He's very focused on, providing opportunities to
giving back
to veterans, and that's how we were all connected. So do you mind sharing a brief story about how you and Daniel met and what your relationship is like?
Yeah, it goes way back when. I believe in 93, I was over in Japan prior to that, but in 93 I got into the USC and I started building a name for myself. And then Dan, my father actually met Dan first, and then my father had actually brought him around to the gym, and we ended up talking, and just like with you guys, you kind of seen that, that kind of person that just kind of glows out of him. And so we connected right away and became great friends, and I was going through my training and fighting, and he was helping with promoting and doing different things of that nature with the gym.
Cool.
And then he ended up getting involved with this, like we all do. We get involved with somebody, we get married, life's great, you got a kid, things are going great, and then all of a sudden something comes apart. I don't want to get too deep into it, but he gets divorced, a separation, not like a vicious one where they're fighting with you, just kind of a separation. And I remember he was kind of struggling for a while, and he came and lived with me and my wife, Tanya, and our family, and because we'd already built a relationship together. And so we just tried to help navigate and get him through some difficult times. And then, once he kind of started seeing the light a little bit and getting himself his feet under him again, he just took off and became Dan all over again.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's
Have you mentored others like that in that capacity as well?
That's one of the other things that I do is I do motivational speaking. I also do testimonials. I grew up in a group home. I was locked up at the age of 10 years old. At 13, I ended up at a place called the Shamrock Boys Home. I spent from 13 to 18 at this home and ended up getting adopted by my dad, who was the one that introduced me and Dan. So my background is helping at-risk kids, being able to help people who are going through struggle times. It just so happened that Dan was just a real close friend at the time that he was going through a lot of his struggles, that I was able to offer some help. But, you know, truthfully, he was the one that did all the work and put himself back where he needed to be.
I love that.
So your background, because we have, you know, thousands of people that are going to listen to this. I'm sure most of them know who you are, but for the ones that may not, you are a professional fighter in the UFC. I have some really interesting questions about the WWF and WWE, but you were a professional wrestler.
We're going to argue about UFC, or I know him as
WWF
yes,
at the time.
Definitely.
Yes.
For those that don't know, I'm a big fan.
I
go way back. We can talk about that.
I have a great question centered around that because I'm in the same boat. But before all of that, you know, you kind of reference it, you know, had a tough, you know, childhood. But so you're born in Georgia.
Yes.
What was the rest of your childhood, you know, leading you to that point? And what had you interested in mixed martial arts or fighting or wrestling? How did you get to that place?
Well, at a young age, you know, 5, 6, and I know this is crazy because a lot of people in their heads that live in, you know, middle class or upper class, they don't wrap their head around 5 and 6, 7-year-old kids on the street by themselves when they have parents or one parent at home that's at work.
Right.
And left home quite a bit, or babysitters that are supposed to watch them just leave because you're in a lower class. Sure. And that's kind of where I was, along with my 2 older brothers. We were left home a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of times with no food, we didn't have toys. We'd take, you know, broken toys out of trash cans, just to entertain ourselves. We'd fight all the time because nobody was watching over us. My biological mother then met somebody who moved to Napa, California. And there I got in more trouble, got stabbed at 10 years old.
Stabbed?
At
10?
At 10, same thing. I went to somewhere else with same routine, same kind of people I hung around with, not the good ones. I literally got stabbed behind a 7-Eleven in Napa, California. Ended up getting locked up in juvenile hall at 10.
Wow.
Because of that event?
Because prior to that, I was robbing stores, and I did strong arm robbery where I was taking a lock blade and I'd walk up to kids that were going to school and I'd stick a knife up into their neck, not stick them, but put it to their neck, and I would take their lunch money.
Wow.
No matter what the cost of that is, that's strong arm robbery.
Sure. Yeah.
So I ended up getting locked up, ended up going through several group homes, ended up going to the Shamrock Boys Home. Like I said, a few years there, I became relevant because of sports.
Yeah.
And, you know, all of a sudden the world just changed for me because of the environment that I once was in, and now I'm here. You know, in this environment. So I was really able to change a lot of things around, but it also gave me an opportunity when, you know, I broke my neck and I get to where your question is, but I broke my neck at 17 years old in high school wrestling. And I had a halo on with chest plate, and I lost my scholarships, I lost everything, and everything I worked for to get to that point. And I remember I was depressed, and I remember my father told me, listen, you didn't come this far just to give up now. And literally I was told I couldn't play contact sports.
Yeah.
And he said, listen, you can do whatever you want to do. You just got to put your mind to it, get yourself right, and get you where you can start doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
So I did that. Opportunities came my way. I ended up playing ball, did well. Went to...
football?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did well there, but then I had an opportunity to go to Japan. And this is where it began for me in my fighting, was because when I went to Japan, I had an opportunity to see what they called hybrid pro wrestling, which was like what you see now, but the ending was predetermined. But you see the punching, the kicking, all that, but the ending was predetermined. And that was early on in Japan, and so I did that. I did really well at it, and then the guys that I was with decided that they wanted to figure out what it was like if it was real. And that's when they called Pancras, which is the organization over in Japan that I fought in.
Yeah.
We did our first event there prior to UFC. I became the first champion in Japan. UFC, so I did it in 93. So 93, UFC starts. I became the beginning of 93. I became the champion in Japan. The end of 93, UFC came out, and I jumped from Japan to the US and fought in the UFC. 1 year later, I became the UFC champion. Now, the reason why I'm kind of explaining the whole story is that when you walk into this kind of fighting, where it's literally no holds barred. There's no time
it's
limit.
Real.
There's no rules. I lived my life doing this without getting paid.
Yeah.
Now they're telling me, hey, you want to do this and we're going to pay you. And I'm like,
sounds great.
I'm not going to get arrested.
Sign me up.
So that's where I got that mentality from, was like, I literally was groomed pretty much my whole life dealing with life-threatening situations from the time that I could barely walk to where I became a young adult. And then all of a sudden this thing came up to where now all of a sudden I could make a career out of it.
Yeah. So in preparation, I watched a few fights, UFC 1 and some of the other fights that you were in. To me, I'm not, so backdrop, I have an athletic background. I wrestled from, I think, 6 until high school with the Sandersons in Utah. So Cale Sanderson and Ed Sanderson, Roman Greco, you know, and I was too tall and skinny, so I wasn't any good, but I did it. And to me, when I watched your wrestling and your success in your fighting, and you kind of touched on it, but you always seem so relaxed in comparison to the person you're fighting. And do you think that was kind of your secret to success, because you had lived that life?
And you're fearless at that point.
And your ability to be calm in a moment of heavy distress, it's fight or flight, it's live or die in that moment. Your opponent is probably not at that same level. Is that what separated your success from other people, you think? Or was there something else?
No, I think it was. I think that the idea of someone, and again, this was new. Someone says, listen, anything goes. You're going to walk in there, you can kick them in the head on the ground, like basically a street fight, right? There's no rules.
Yeah.
For 99.9% of the guys walking in there, they've never experienced that on a consistent basis.
Right.
Sure, they've gotten into street fights and they've done these, and they've also been really nervous when they've done it, right?
Yeah.
Where I lived my life from the time I could barely walk, going through knives and being jumped and all these things. So now I'm standing in there going, it's you and me?
Yeah.
Like, I don't got to worry about somebody behind me or getting shot or
I
stabbed.
can do this. Yeah.
It's like, this is easy.
Yeah, this is awesome. So, there's so many questions that we had written out. I mean, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your connection to the military as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, you served, correct?
No.
Or you grew up on a base?
No.
Born.
Yes, kind of.
Born on a base.
No, yes, but there was a story there because, and I don't talk about it too much because I'm not proud of it, but like early on, obviously, I was born in Macon, Georgia, on Warner Robins Air Force Base. So there was connections there, but that wasn't good, right? Never. The biological father was never around, so that didn't go well. But my next experience was I did get into the Marine Corps, and I believe it was in '86. I'm not sure, '85, '86, somewhere around there after I got done playing college ball. Yeah. And I'd already broken my neck by this, right? I mean, I broke it in high school. So I'd already gotten past all that, never really thought about it. And I figured I was going to go ahead and join the Marine Corps. It just sounded like something I could really get into.
Yeah.
And so it was in obviously here, MCRD, the Marine Corps San Diego down here.
Yeah.
And I was in it probably, I think it was a 3-month boot camp. And I think I had about 2 to 3 weeks left. We did Mount, I can't say it, motherfucker, right?
Yeah, no, you can say anything you want.
So you did all that stuff, and I was about 2 or 3 weeks away from graduating with my blues. I was a series honor guy the whole time through, which doesn't happen. They're always switching them out. And I was just, I was put together. I was very athletic.
Yep.
And a situation came up where when I went to the drill, not the drill instructor, but the recruiter.
Yeah.
I had broken my neck, and I revealed that, hey, but I'd already played college ball, I already done all this, and I said, I'm good to go, I can do PT, whatever, and he said, yeah, don't worry about it. I said, okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I don't worry about it. I get in, I do the boot camp, I'm kicking ass, 300 of my PTs, I'm just crushing it, I'm just killing it.
Yeah.
And you know how you're constantly going to sick, like, getting checked out, always going through physicals, constantly, you're going to get things done. And so I was doing that. Now, my head was shaved, and I got holes in my head, like I've been shot, like the holes here and here, and then in the front, where when I broke my neck, I had the halo on. Where bolts go into your head, chest plate on. So no one really ever said anything, and I wasn't aware there was anything really wrong. We weren't hiding anything, because I told them.
Yep.
Well, I go to the one, I don't know, probably the final one, going into the graduation or getting close to graduation. And they asked the question, and I've gone through, I don't know how many physical tests already,
Yeah.
right? And nobody's ever said anything, but this one decided to ask me, and I was like, no, no big deal. Yeah, I broke my neck when I was in high school. He's like, it doesn't say it on here. And I was like, I don't know what, I
disclosed it.
I
Yeah.
told him.
Yeah.
I have to imagine everyone else was like, we are not going to say this because we want him.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and that's where it got real sticky because when I was going through the problem, because when that started to circulate, it wasn't the Marine Corps that was giving me the hard time. It was the Navy because they were in charge of the sick bay. They were the ones that called the shots.
Right.
So when I went in front of the medical board, it wasn't the Marine Corps calling the shots. It was the Navy.
Got it.
Yeah.
So when I had to go to this room, which was a bunch of scumbags that were trying to escape, and I'm sitting in this thing, and I'm like embarrassed. My senior would come.
They want to leave
Yeah,
it.
and
You want
you're
to be
like-
there.
Yeah, but the senior would come, and he would literally be coming every day talking to me. I said, man, you got to get me out of here. He's like, this isn't where I want to be. And
Yeah.
I remember he was trying hard to get me out, but one thing led to another. I go back to my barracks. They send me back,
Yeah.
and there's always these drill instructors that you got some that just are constantly nagging at you. They want to try to break you down. Not in any old way, but that's just their job.
Yeah.
Well, this one, besides the senior, pulled me in the office and told me that my grandfather had died. And this is after me being stuck in that building. They bring me back.
Oh, no.
We're getting things not clear yet. But I'm sitting there with the windows all glared. All the people are in there getting their boxes together. And I'm sitting in the office there, and he tells me my grandfather died, and I started to tear up. And he looked at me, and he says, what do you can? You know how they do.
Yeah.
And I lost it.
Oh, yeah.
And jumped over the desk, and one thing led to I ended up beating the tar out of the guy. And
That was UFC half.
Yeah.
that
It
was
just wasn't sanctioned.
that was the real Ken Shamrock in fight mode.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, I got an honorable discharge.
Yeah.
They weren't gonna, and this is the thing that they said was that the Navy couldn't take a risk on if something was to happen, they would be
Yeah.
completely
The liability.
responsible
Makes
for
sense.
liability, right?
Yeah. Well, you're here supporting
So after
now.
that, I became world champion over in Japan and the United States, here in America, in the UFC. So you should have kept me.
Yeah, that's right.
I love
And
it.
now I'm actually 4 or 5 different bases. While I was training the UFC, I actually trained the Marine Corps in Quantico. We went down there and trained the brass down there.
Yeah.
The Army, I trained with them and worked with them and training them. The MCMAP program for the Marine Corps, I changed that program to actually bring it up to date.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are still a part of it, whether you were a part of it or not.
Oh, man.
So.
I have so much respect.
Yeah.
I have so much respect for the men and women that are in our armed forces, man, and the things that go on that they truly do not get to see because it's just not what people want to see.
Right.
And they go about their lives every single day. These people walking up and down,
Yep.
enjoying their time, looking at all this stuff. They truly don't know what goes on
Right.
behind the scenes, and people that sacrifice their lives every single day. And we're out there giving immigrants opportunities to get jobs, and we won't fill jobs with the Marine Corps or Army or Navy or Air Force. They should have first right to jobs in this country.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally agree. Yeah, it's a tough, subject to talk about in a podcast setting, but I mean,
Did I open up a can of worms?
No, we love it.
It's
Yeah.
great. I mean, we're complete. I'm personally completely aligned. I mean, what we've said leading up to this election is that we are really, or personally, I'm very disenfranchised by both sides because I think the only thing that can really change the United States is an inspiring leader, where younger generations decide that they aren't given something, they got to go to work, and we've got to change our spending behavior as a nation to get back to a place where we are dominant. And I'm freaked out about the current election cycle because there's so much divide, and I'm not really seeing that either one of those two people can connect the country in a way where we're all inspired. And I think back to the last person that I thought did a great job of that, and it's Reagan.
Yeah.
And to me, when you look at that kind of a prolific figure, it's just we don't have that person today. And there is a better out of the two people, I think.
Well,
but
I think
it's tough.
where we're at right now, there's definitely a right.
Sure.
There's a right choice, and it's not because one person is a bad person. It's just one person is going to stand the ground. Is going to actually fight and get things done in this country,
sure,
and not outside this country. And I think the worst thing that's happened to our country is that we've allowed people in leadership roles to pit one side against the other.
Yep.
So that there's so much hate that nobody wants to see what's right and wrong. All they want to know is they hate that person and they don't want him in, and they think this person's a joke and they don't want that person in. Both sides, but if you're just looking at policies and you're looking at like it used to be, where you're voting for things that would make the country better, then you can make a choice on whatever you believe are the things that you want.
There's just
to
a
help
lot of
your life.
distractions.
Yeah, it's hate. It's all hate being created by leaders.
I have a very good idea. Ken Shamrock, Suzanne Seini, President, Vice President. 2024 is not too late. There's a lot of logic. It makes a ton of sense.
We can make it happen.
Yeah. You want to know what?
Time.
I ain't touching that job.
We have 700,000 people here today. Let's get it done.
We're launching today.
One guarantee, you can guarantee this, is that when you do that, you got at least half the people are going to hate you.
That's
and the other half's going to love you. There's no way you can have all love you.
Yeah, that's right.
So before we close out, because you talked about your dad with me personally, and I can really tell that he made, it sounds like the most impact on your life. And you shared with me some stories about him kind of putting you in check a little bit and being that person. So what did that mean to you and your career, and even, where you are today?
Yeah, I think one story that and there's a lot of different things between my young life in the group home and then as an adult. There's a lot of transitions that happened where he was a big component of being able to help me make good decisions. But I remember that he came to me one time prior to, well, actually I want to go back to the actual part where it gave me confidence in him. Was like when I was in the hospital when I broke my neck. I was clamped down in this bed and I was flat. Like if I was watching TV, it had to be through a mirror because I had broken my neck. I couldn't move, right? So they'd flip me over, and I remember he's in there and I got depressed because I felt like my life was over because the only thing I had to do was sports.
Yeah.
And I remember he said to me, he goes, listen, he said, you could pout all day. I mean, it was hard, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like sugarcoating. He says, you can pout and cry and do all this stuff. He said, but you were the only one that could change the direction of your life. Doctors can't do it. I can't do it. You're the only one that can do it. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm a 17-year-old kid laying there with my life was all sports and scholarships and all these other things, being told that it's over.
Right.
And he's like, dude.
Yeah.
Do something about it.
You decide if it's over.
It's on me.
Yeah.
And so I remember, he's right. So I went out and did a bunch of things, got myself in healthy, went, played ball, did all these things, and got to a certain place to where I was successful. And I remember he came to me as I was starting to climb that ladder, and he said, listen, and it's wise words I think you tell to anybody that's getting into a position where they can become a super celebrity. And he said, you need to make sure that you find one or two people that you know that you can go to when you feel like the world just doesn't make sense. Like you don't know what's right, you don't know what you're doing, you're numb, you don't know what's right and wrong. You think that you're doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And he said, you need to find that person that's going to tell you straight up what you're doing, without any trying to protect your feelings or anything. I just tell you straight. And I was like, okay. And I remember I kept that stored in my brain. And I remember I got to a point to where it was probably 3-4 years into my career. I was champion. I had won all these belts, and everything was free. I'd go into nightclubs. They would give me... That right there is some power, man.
Yeah, live at the air show.
Yes.
So he said, just make sure that person's going to tell you straight when everything becomes confused. And I said, oh, all right. So I remember I got into my career quite a bit into there, and I was partying, and I was having good times, and women, and drugs, and alcohol, and everything was just given. It was free. And my world just became so spun that I couldn't see the right and the wrong, and I was so lost that I didn't know what the right direction was. And I remember, I remember what he told me. So I went to him and I said, am I screwing up or was I hurt? You know, I was like, I kind of laughed too because like I'm a fighter.
Yeah.
Like I take punches. I mean, for 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, I fought at the highest level.
Right.
Sparring and fighting and, you know, and then that chair shot. And it's like the one thing I learned how to do was roll with punches and be able to roll with when you're getting hit.
Yeah.
And the second thing is I always knew where the strongest part of my head was, which is my forehead.
Yeah.
Now, when you see other people take chair shots, it's always the side of the head, top of the head, back of the head. And I was like, you're not hitting me there. And then Rock says, well, we want to do the chair shot. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, hit me in the face.
Wow.
I kid you not, I told him that. We were in the locker room, and I said, dude, swing for my face, I'll take care of the rest. And he looked at me and says, I ain't doing that. And I was like, bro, if you don't do it, I ain't selling it.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he was like, are you sure? And I said, yeah. You swing for my face, I'll take care of the rest. He goes, all right. And I remember looking at him right before we walked out of the locker room. I said, if you don't swing it, I ain't selling it. And I remember Rock looked at me and goes, oh, I'll swing it. So,
that's amazing.
Well, when people who saw the actual match, he swung it.
Yes, hard.
But what they have to realize is that we're professionals in there also.
Right.
And I knew how to roll with punches. Nobody's ever taken a shot like this before. It was always to the top of the head or the back of the head, and that just wasn't going to happen because I wanted to see it coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I remember after he gives me the shot, boom, I go down on my knees, and I remember looking at him, and he got the chair in his hand, and I'm looking at him in the eyes, and I said, you better bring it. And he looked at me, he gave me the old eye rock, because, oh, I'm bringing it.
Yeah.
And he swung that thing, and when it hit, man, I tell you the worst thing about the chair shot was the sound. I swear, I felt like my eardrums broke. Like, boom!
Was it basically what we just heard at the air show?
I mean, that's what it felt like to me. Like, I couldn't hear a thing.
Yeah.
But as far as pain-wise, yeah, I didn't hardly feel it. Because when he swung it at me, just as the chair got there, I put my chin down like I would in a fight.
Yeah.
And it literally caught my forehead. And the chair bent around my head. But it made such a loud noise in the arena that everybody thought he killed me.
Yeah.
To this day, I can't convince fans that I didn't feel hardly anything. They're like, you're lying.
Yeah.
You're not telling the truth.
Awesome.
And I was like, I'm telling you the truth, man.
Yeah.
It was the greatest chair shot ever in a wrestling match.
Okay, I have a question. Tag team match. 2 people or tag team. Who are you picking to be on your team?
Oh, there's no question in my mind right now. It's going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Okay.
And Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Okay.
That's it, man. And there's other great ones. There's Bret Hart, who was a tactician.
I love Bret Hart. I was a big Bret Hart fan.
Yeah.
And you're going to laugh at my other one, but Chris Jericho was my other.
Yeah.
He's clever.
I was a huge Chris Jericho fan.
He's clever, man. He was a clever one, yes. But he was a snake.
Yes, yeah.
Austin 316. He was like the spear, right?
Yeah,
that was his
Austin,
patented
Bret
move.
Hart, Stone Cold, even The Undertaker. I mean, it's just Shawn Michaels. I worked with him, and he was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of really good guys during that Attitude Era.
So cool.
Yeah.
So how have you been able to take care of your body? I mean, we got to spend a little bit of time today together. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to age you, but you've been through a lot, right? And you look awesome. I mean, I've been around other wrestlers and professional football players who are really banged up.
Right.
So walk me through your routine and what you eat and what's been able to keep you operating at such a high level.
I think that what's going to shock most people is it's not about the weight and the time you spend in the gym.
Yeah.
Because when you train like I did from the time I was 13 years old all the way until I was 52 years old, I was fighting and I was training at a very high level.
Wow.
So when I got into a point to where I think I was 56 at the time, where I started to back off and I did 3 times a week, and then it got probably about 2 years ago, I got maybe once or twice a week, and now it's probably once, maybe every 2 weeks. And the one thing that you'll learn about your body is your body always stores the work that you put in years before. It will. What happens with people who continue to keep working hard is you see them shrink up and they look like they're getting old and they keep training hard, and it's like you can't do that. You got to back up, let your body rest.
Yeah.
Let it be able to absorb all the years of training that you put in to be able to catch up to you now.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of what I've done. I slowed it way down. I train maybe once or twice a week. Sometimes if I'm traveling, I won't train at all. It's not mandatory.
Yeah.
But the one thing that you got to make sure that you do is rest, and that you're getting your rest, because with that work that you put in over the years and the multiple times and the hard training you put in, it is time for your body to catch up, and the way your body catches up is through rest and making sure you're resting properly.
I love that. Yeah.
But major injuries as well. So
Yeah.
stem cells. What have you played around with?
Yeah, I tell you what, man, there was a time, probably around 54, I would say, it felt like when I went into the gym and I was doing dumbbell presses. Before I was doing 150 pounds, anywhere from 12 to 15 reps.
Yeah.
I got to a point as I got older that I was doing 25 and 35 pounds, and I was struggling because I had no power. And it all due with damage into my shoulders and neck because of the broken neck and shoulder injuries. And
Probably
I just
the
felt,
chair shot.
Oh yeah, right too, yeah.
Probably helped.
Right, yeah. But so you know, it just felt like felt like my body was just shutting down. Even though I was backing up and I was letting it rest, it just felt like I just had no energy and that I wasn't recovering. And I remember somebody actually kind of pitched me this stem cell thing, and this was, back when I was 54, and I'm 60 now, so it's a while back.
Yeah.
But they were doing it in Medellin, Colombia, and they kept telling me, if you do it here, they have regulations, and you're not going to get the amount you need for what you've done to your body. You need a whole bunch of them to go in there and be able to fix what you've done.
Yeah.
And I was like, I never wanted things. I don't do flu shots. I don't do COVID shots. I don't do anything that unless it's something that I feel my body had needed.
Yep.
Well, I was at a point where I felt like I needed something, and he kept saying, man, I'm telling you, this thing will help rejuvenate you, recover, heal those tears and damages that have been done in there. It'll take time, but eventually it'll heal. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I went to Medellin, and I remember getting it done. I remember the next 2 days, I couldn't hardly even put my clothes on. And I was so sore. Because they did my whole body. Like I did all my knees, my wrists, my shoulders, all the joints.
Were you thinking, like, what did I do?
I did. I'm like, man, I'm beat up. But I remember it was probably about 3 or 4 months in, I remember noticing, like, wait a minute. I started working out again. I started feeling like I had energy. I was vibrant. And I remember just thinking to myself, it wasn't something that just snapped in here. I feel like Superman. It was like a gradual process. I just noticed one day, like,
feeling pretty
I'm not struggling getting up. And I'm in there, and I've started with 60 pounds, doing 20 reps with dumbbells because I'm not going to go heavy. And I was like, man, I'm doing this pretty good. And I remember thinking, man, that's got to be the stem cells. And 6 months in, it got better. And up to this day, I have not gone back and done any stem cells again. I could if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I felt like, man, this thing has done everything. People talk about the fountain youth, right?
Yeah.
And I was bad, that stuff just not possible. I'm telling people, if there ever was a fountain youth, that's it.
Yeah.
That is it. And I swear by it. I'm not saying this is going to work for everyone.
Right.
Sure.
You got to have a certain kind of damages and things that are going on in your body that can be healed.
Right.
And I believe I had those over the years and years of training, stressing my body out.
Yeah.
That this was the perfect combination for me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Got it.
We'd love to wrap on a real estate focused question. Daniel is such a prolific agent in our business, such a figure in the community. The veteran real estate company, right, is focused on helping current enlisted members, achieve the dream of homeownership.
Which everybody should be doing.
Yeah.
The whole world should be focusing on our military.
Yeah, we agree. But we'd love to hear a story, good, bad, right, wrong, any sort of story that Ken Shamrock has experienced in real estate.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'll be completely honest, man. I'm normally not the one involved in any transactions. I have an agent that usually brings me things, and I'll read through them, and I'll say yay or nay.
Yep.
My wife is the one that really kind of does the final say.
Yeah.
Smart man.
She just puts the paper in front of me and says, sign here.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with that.
So I truly was never really truly involved in actual sale. I mean, I got walked through. Do you like it, hon? Do you think, yeah, do you love it, honey? Yeah, I like it. Okay, cool. That's it. That's
Seems
about
pretty
it right
easy.
there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I say to any man out there, honey-do, just say yes, baby. It's good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
You like it? I like it. I love it.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate all your insight. I feel like we learned so much.
Yeah.
You know what I can say? Obviously, we don't know each other that well, but you're just such a great human being. And I mean, you know, the interaction we've had, we can just tell how genuine you are.
Yeah.
You're giving back to people and you know, helping
thank you.
Daniel at a time of need, and that's how we're all connected. So, man, just 100 thank yous.
Yeah.
Such an impressive life, and you know, thanks again for coming on the show.
Yeah, definitely an inspiring story for everyone out there. You know, it's especially on a real estate podcast.
Right.
It's usually happy and
Yeah.
you know. It's a little different. So we appreciate your perspective,
Yes.
and you really are such an inspiring figure to so many people. So
Well, thank you. And I'll just leave this with people out there that are watching. You know, there was a point in time in my life where when I broke my neck, where I did everything right. I know I'd done everything wrong prior to that. And I got to a point where I did everything right. And then, you know, this thing happens. It was out of my control. I ended up breaking my neck. I mean, it just happened at 17 years old. And I had my whole life in front of me, and it was just taken away. And I think everybody, whether you do it when you're a teen or when you're an adult, go through different things in their life where you feel like there's no way out. And I say this, you got to get up, put one foot in front of the other, and you will find the door you're supposed to go through. You just got to keep working at it.
I love it.
All right. Thank you so much. That is a wrap on our Realty Talk podcast live from the Air Show with
Yes.
Ken Shamrock. Thanks
See you
again.
next time.
See you next time.